there's no maintenance really on those kinds of cars. You know, the regular combustion engine, you got oil changes, you got oil leaks that have to be repaired. You know, you just have a lot more fluids in the vehicle that need to be changed, where electric motor doesn't really require much maintenance. I mean, periodically here and there we get sometimes where like the brushes need to be cleaned off. You gotta take the motor out and clean the brushes.
Today, I'm excited to chat with Bryan Collins, shop foreman at Braman Miami and a former master tech with 12 years of experience in dealership service departments. In this conversation, we uncover the daily life of a master tech, dive into their earning potential, explore how the rise of electric vehicles is shaping the future of an industry, and much, much more. This was a very special and unique conversation. I think you will love it. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: Icon Technologies, CDG Recruiting, and OpenLane. And now let's get into the show. Bryan Collins on the CDG podcast. Bryan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. Again, I appreciate you messaging me and giving me the opportunity to come on here.
Yeah, dude, you're like you might be the only master tech on LinkedIn, man. So no, but in all seriousness, so I think what stuck out with you is you seem polished, and I saw you actually engaging on social. And to me, that served as like a proxy that you're probably relatively informed master tech who's kind of progressive and thinking forward. And so I said, hey, why not? I said, I want to reach out to you. So that was why I reached out.
Yeah, man. I mean, I know I'm not the only master on there. I have, pretty significant amount of friends that I do follow on there, but I know that maybe the amount of technicians on there are probably following, other individuals and maybe aren't staying up to date on the industry and the things that you post and the podcasts. So maybe this is a bridge that we can kind of connect both sides and, cause a lot of other technicians to maybe jump on your platform and, get informed.
100%. Let this be the cue. I mean, think about it. It's like I said, it's when you engage on social, like people are very reluctant to do it, but good things happen. So, dude, I'm happy to have you on. This is going to be very interesting because, like I said, I haven't had a current tech or shop foreman on the pod before. And there's a lot of questions we'll talk about, from pay to attracting talent to retaining talent to distributing work to just dealership dynamics. Let's get started with you and your story. For any aspiring techs out there, or for anyone that works at a dealership, frankly, for anyone, can you tell us kind of how you came up the ranks, your story to becoming a master tech? I believe today you're a shop foreman. You'll tell us about that shortly, but can you give us your story?
All right. So I grew up in a relatively small suburban rural area outside of Philadelphia, similar to where you're located now. The city, or it's not the city, the town was Percy. And, with my dad in the driveway, we would just tinker on cars, do the occasional oil change. I bought, my first car was actually an 87 Mustang. He had a 69 Mustang, and we would work on the cars to the extent of his knowledge of working on cars. He didn't do that professionally. He did other, blue collar jobs, but, he showed me enough to get me intrigued in working on cars. Mm-hmm. Now, I graduated high school in 2010, and the 2008 economic crash kind of caused the job market to have a lot of uncertainty, and I would read the newspaper back then, and that caused me to realize that maybe college wasn't the right choice for me, and I started pursuing post-secondary options. I ended up selecting a school down in Warminster, PA called Automotive Training Center, and I would commute from Percy to there, and I think my program was like 16 months. I graduated high school in June, and then I started in like July, like right away. So from, in the orientation at that school, they also introduced the new students to programs. I think Porsche's is like called PTAP. Mercedes had one called Elite. BMW had one called STEP. And those are like very prestigious technician programs that the technicians have to have like 99% attendance. You got to have almost like a 4.0. You got to have references, you got to have job, you have to have training, in like a dealership or a shop. You have to have like the experience for you to apply, and the application process is very extensive. So when I was going through post-secondary school, it was my goal to qualify and have the opportunity to get into one of those programs. By the time it was I was able to start applying, BMW STEP was the one that seemed to call out to me the most. So I did do the application process, and that process was very, very extensive. I got you do an over the phone interview. Essentially, they just want to kind of hear you out and see what you're all about. They emailed me a 50-question ASE test, and then if you pass that, then they ask you to come in for an in-person interview, and then you got to do a 100-question ASE test, and you got to do reading and writing comprehension. You pass all that.
Bryan, quick question on that. At this point, do they know anything about your physical skills?
No, they just know that they just know the numbers. They know that your attendance, they know your grades, they got your references, they know where you've worked.
Oh, okay, got it. So they know you. Okay, understood.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
so the STEP program is called Student Technician Education Program, and BMW pays for that education. At the time I went, it was 6 months, and in order for you to get employed after, a dealer has to sponsor you or buy you out of the program, essentially.
And why did you decide to go into this program to go after like an OEM as opposed to, you're a highly skilled guy. You could walk down the street and get a job at any shop, right? What was the driver for you? Like, was it higher compensation or, a better career path? What went through your mind there?
So in order to become a certified, master or work your way up the ranks in a dealer, it can take a very long time because there's many other technicians in the establishment, seniority, your skill sets, all that plays a factor into the service manager or director figuring out who they're going to send to training and level up. So that can take, 5, 7, 10 years in order to get to the status that maybe you want to get to. This path that I chose, I go to the 6 months of training. It's, very heavy, in depth, in books. You got homework, training, and then you come out essentially a master. You just have to work the 2 years of experience to get the certification. So it's basically like a highway to becoming a master as opposed to the normal route of having to work in the dealer for quite a long time until you get the opportunity.
So this might be an unpopular question. I come from the independent world, and I want to ask you, do you feel like techs who are in the independent world, non-franchised, do you think they're at a disadvantage from a career path perspective because they don't have this type of training that you're talking about?
So this is one of the things I actually noted down on my notes. So
oh yeah, there you go.
I'm actually probably going to hurt some feelings. Yeah, I'm going to hurt some feelings when I say this. I think that ASE master certification is more valuable than an OEM master certification.
Ooh. Okay, so then just to confirm here, so you're saying no, they are not at a disadvantage because they can be ASE certified.
I maybe from a career perspective, because I feel like the independents maybe don't have as much, those facilities don't maybe gross as much as a dealer can, so they don't have as much monetary compensation to offer as a dealer. That's kind of an assumption. I don't want to say that that's a hard and fast rule, but it just seems generally from technicians I've talked to, the pay is probably a bit more favorable in a dealer than an independent. But I find that an ASE certified individual has a better, well-rounded understanding of vehicles and how to repair things as opposed to OEM, which you could say is kind of like a one-trick pony. You were taught, if you were Honda, you were taught the ways of Honda. I was taught the ways of BMW, Ford, and that doesn't allow you to get out of your comfort zone and learn how to test other systems. One of the things I was also going to say was in my progression, once I became, a dealer technician, was I would actually seek aftermarket training. I know some individuals in aftermarket that are trainers, and I actually know a few that are mobile diagnostic technicians. And the reason I would seek that kind of training is because those guys need to learn how to work on every brand. So the type of tests that they have been taught or learned transcend every brand. So that stuff to me was very valuable to learn and understand how that would work and how those guys, make a living.
Okay, so I know recently you transitioned to shop foreman, which we'll talk about the differences there and why you did that. How many years were you a master tech?
So if you include from when I started at a STEP, which, is arguable, I started down here in South Florida, that would be November of 2012.
And that pretty much brought us up till 2024.
Yeah.
So couple questions here. First of all, what was it about you that enabled you to rise through the ranks? And, why did you go to master tech training, right? Can you if you had to sort of reverse engineer yourself or look from the outside and say, why did Bryan Collins rise through the ranks? What do you think it was? And I'm assuming that that being able to do the job, to me, that's table stakes. Of course you got to do the job, but there's intangibles, right? Like to me, the first thing I think about having managed a large shop is there's attitude, there's ability to work with a team, blah, blah, blah. So what was it about you, do you think, that enabled you to rise through the ranks?
So at that school, I made a lot of friends and I'm still friends with, a fair amount of those guys and they keep in touch. But one thing that when I first started going there, I told myself was that even though I'm going to make friends and I'm going to, apply myself, everybody there is actually competition. So when there's a guy in my class doing better than me, I wouldn't hate, I wouldn't be upset. Some people get, jealous or, just in any type of atmosphere, whether it's in the classroom or in the shop or, whatever it is. But if you become friends with that person and study them and figure out what they're good at, you guys can basically both put your skills together and sharpen each other up. So I would always try to find the individual that was the best at whatever topic, and I would try to learn from them. That was how I approached, when I was in school. That's how I approached when when I was a tech in the shop. If there was a car I couldn't figure out or I was having trouble, there's nothing wrong with asking for help, especially because you can't know everything. There's some things and experiences that other people have, and being resourceful is just as important as knowing all the information.
This episode is brought to you by Icon Technologies. Icon Technologies was founded by dealers for dealers to solve the daily challenges your dealership faces. Their no-cost lot management platform with Find the Car, Find the Keys technology makes finding inventory easy, while their dealer-branded Connect app drives customer loyalty and revenue. At Icon, they're more than a tech provider, they're your partner. Schedule a demo today by clicking the link in the show notes below and see how Icon Technologies can help drive your dealership success.
So you're a lifelong learner.
Yes.
And what did you seek to learn from these people? Like, was it very technical things, or was it like problem solving strategies? What were you looking for?
Anything. Like I said, sometimes I'll go to those aftermarket trainings because they would show me different techniques that I would have otherwise known. Sometimes it's mindset, sometimes just the approach. Maybe I would have taken a different path and I would have got there, but maybe their path was faster. And then, in school particularly, sometimes the way that individuals viewed a way a system would work was maybe made more sense to me once it was explained. Just in comparison, just for anyone that's, aspiring to be a tech, when I first went to automotive school, I didn't know the difference between a turbo and a supercharger, man. I didn't know nothing. I could do tire changes in my driveway and oil changes. Like, I could do the very basics, but when it came to like in-depth stuff, I didn't know anything. So, there's a path for anybody that wants to take that path. You have to be very open-minded and willing to admit your faults and kind of know when you don't know something, you have to admit to it, and you got to try to sharpen up on that.
What do you think about, well, let's talk about pay for a second. It's a juicy topic that everyone loves, right? For anyone that is maybe tangential to the industry that's listening, there's what's called hourly pay, which we all know, and then there's flat rate, right? Which I call, basically performance-based pay, because it's really the manufacturer sets a labor time for a repair. Let's just say it's 2 hours, and if you complete it in 1 hour, you still get paid the 2 hours. You just outperform that. First, what do you prefer and why?
I've always been in a flat rate system, so I'm going to be, I guess, lenient towards that, because as a flat rate tech, your paycheck is dependent on your ability. So over time, obviously, I've focused on being able to be efficient and, try to beat every time that I get in my, every job that I get in my base, so that I'm always winning. And obviously, sometimes you lose some. But in my opinion, I like flat rate. I know a lot of people don't like it, but the way that the industry is going with all the electric cars and the way Tesla and Rivian and Lucid kind of operate, it seems that it's probably eventually going to go to just a flat pay.
Why do you think that? Why do you think it's going to go to a flat pay?
So, I'm also like hybrid and electric car certified. So I did when I was a tech, a lot of those repairs, and I still help some of my technicians now with them. There's no maintenance really on those kinds of cars. The regular combustion engine, you got oil changes, you got oil leaks that have to be repaired. You just have a lot more fluids in the vehicle that need to be changed, where electric motor, it doesn't really require much maintenance. Periodically here and there we get sometimes where like the brushes need to be cleaned off. You got to take the motor out and clean the brushes. But as cars continue to go hybrid and electric, other than just getting tires, the occasional brake fluid flush, which sometimes not even they need that because they're brake by wire sometimes. But the maintenance is going down, which means the car's not in the shop as much.
Does that concern you for your career? How do you think about that? Like, how do you reconcile that with your career track, right? You came into this industry as a safe, lucrative option to make a living, and cars are changing, right? What goes through your mind?
I think that there's always going to have to be a place for, individuals of technical ability and being able to fix cars. The type of monetary compensation that they're going to get over time, I think that might end up changing as, less cars to work on. There's not going to be as much for the tech to do. It's not going to be less cars on the road, but, they don't require as much maintenance. So they're not in the shop as much. So I don't really know how that's going to go. That's probably another 10 years out down the line and seeing how things are going to go for that. But I'm not really sure how that's going to look.
You seem like your outlook is pretty bleak, just gauging by your sentiment. I will tell you, I agree that it will change. I think that if I were right now, if you put me right now, say, hey, what are you betting on for the next 20 years, sales or service? I'd put more of my chips in service because I think that, like you said, there may be a bit less work, but there will be more vehicles on the road. In theory, if transportation is easier, if it's somewhat autonomous, who knows what happens? I just think that, it's no different than if like buying a car is easier. If buying a car is a lot easier, then you may buy a car every 3 years instead of every 6 years. And that would mean more purchases every single year. So I think something similar for service may happen. But is that the sentiment that you're kind of expressing? Do you feel like that's shared within the technician community, or is this something more personal?
I've never really asked that question necessarily. I know that there's still going to be older cars coming in to get worked on, so I know there's still going to be
correct.
Work.
It's going to take time.
Yeah, I'm kind of just thinking like forecasting down the road, as, hybrid and electric cars mainly take over and kind of push out petroleum-based, propulsion. That's probably how I see it. And again, I don't know how every technician views that. I mean, everybody knows that things are changing and no one really knows the direction. But, I guess on the tech side, guys are kind of just looking probably more short-sighted, trying to just stay current with what's happening now, trying to stay educated on the type of vehicles that they got to repair now. Now that we're talking about it, I'm kind of intrigued to see how other people view it. They might have a different view than myself.
We'll see in the comments. Tell me more about, so on you personally, how many hours did you typically flag per pay period? Again, you said you really operated flat rate your entire career. What were you putting up? What kind of hours?
So that kind of fluctuated because in the beginning, as I was still kind of learning myself, learning the product, learning the system, and trying to, become efficient. In the very beginning, I was just happy to, kind of break even. If I ended the week with a 40-hour, turnaround, correct, I was actually pretty happy, even if it took me 50 hours or longer. Towards the later end of when I was actually a tech and wrenching, I would say my efficiency was always above a 1-to-1. So I would always end up in a pay period. I could do anywhere from 50 to 70, or sorry, not a pay period, a week.
In a week.
Yeah, 50 to 70. I'd say it just depends on if I would go on Saturdays. Sometimes I would work perpetual Saturdays back to back to back, even though I wasn't scheduled, just because there was work.
What are master techs similar to you who are flagging above like a 1-to-1? They're flagging like 50 to 70 hours a week. You know lots of master techs clearly. So like, what are they making roughly on an annual basis?
All right. So I would say on average, I'm not speaking about like a master. I would say just like in general, just technicians that I know, everybody for the most part does about 100 or more. 100,000 a year or more. Now the top guys, I know clear 200, and that type of income matches the type of dedication and time that they put in.
I can only imagine. I mean, they're not picking up dollars from the floor. I can tell you, we all know that. Yeah, I mean, that was more or less in my range. Now, when you say the top guys, you're talking to the masters primarily, or?
I meant I would say like the top income bracket guys. Not necessarily do they all have to be masters. Generally they have to have the experience.
The top decile.
Yeah, because there can be guys that are 10 years in and they're still not masters because maybe they didn't have the opportunity to go down the path that I went, or maybe they're at a dealer that they're still trying to get there.
So a couple more questions about that actually. So when you kind of rose through the ranks, did you switch dealerships throughout? Were you at the same dealership the entire time?
All right. So when I was going to post-secondary school, which Automotive Training Center, I actually was employed at a Lexus dealership that my girlfriend at the time's mom was friends with the sales manager. So he was able to help me become a trainee at that facility. And still very grateful for that opportunity because I learned a significant amount of information on how a dealership works, a shop works, how to be a tech from those guys there. So I'm forever grateful for that opportunity, and especially the guys that trained me there. And from that point, obviously, I went to STEP, did the 6 months without working at a dealer. And then there was a lot of recruiting to going out of there, but I chose to go to South Florida, and I worked in a dealership just outside of Fort Lauderdale, and I was there almost 11 years. So I was pretty...
yeah, I know what dealership you're talking. I just passed by it like a week ago.
Yeah,
I was just down there. Yeah, my pops lives down in Fort Lauderdale. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. The one by the airport, right? Yeah. See that one. That one's like I guess you could say the main store. I worked actually at the sister of the satellite store, which is actually on out a little further west. But yeah, they're the same store.
Who owns that? Who owns that again?
Holman Automotive. Holman. Yeah, it's actually based up by up in Jersey.
Yeah, it's right near us. Yeah. So just to clarify here, so you were not at one dealership as you rose through the ranks. You did move. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because I think that if I'm a dealer listening to this, I'm asking myself, how do I show and, really help my techs grow within my dealership or dealer group without having them, or, without them wanting or looking elsewhere? Because at the end of the day, like, I'm going to have to work. It would be a shame for me to lose them somewhere else just so they can take that next level up. I think, kind of keeping your fingers to the pulse and making sure that if you're seeing someone that's pushing, make sure, you elevate them through the ranks, or give them the opportunity at least so they don't leave you. Because it would be a shame if the only way to become a master tech would be to hop or get poached by another dealer. You know what I mean?
So there's a couple that's a kind of a loaded topic. So I would end up leaving a dealer on good terms in every organization or dealer that I work for. I have nothing but love and praise for everything that they did for me, and I'm grateful for all those organizations. And I never left on a bad note or for a bad reason. It was always for growth. Now, the topic of people leaving so that they can again level up or get higher pay, that is definitely a thing. That is definitely a thing, because if an employee stays loyal to a dealership, the type of raises that they're going to get, I mean, generally speaking, from my little bit of knowledge of how maybe fixed ops and all that works, is they're usually supposed to only do like percentage increases for each technician. And if that technician decided to leave to go to another dealer, they're going to get a pretty significant raise compared to what they were offered by being loyal. So it would almost be nicer if it was opposite, but I don't know how that would
yeah
look.
I think so. Here's how I would say this, right? I do believe in like proactive raises. I think it served me very well. It served me very well in my career, right? When you notice someone outperforming and maybe punching above their weight class in a different role, being proactive about that, even if it involves some training. I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like at all. I think it's actually bad habit for changes when the role hasn't changed. And again, I'm not talking about the, annual merit increases, that's one thing. I think it is important though, as a good leader, to have, like I said, your fingers on the pulse. If you see someone, right, that is started in a certain role, but maybe has punched above their weight class or is sort of positioning themselves into a different role, it's your duty, because guess what? If you don't do that, then they pull the what am I worth card. They go to the other dealer, they get that offer, and then they come to you and you end up giving them the raise anyway, and you look like a schmuck because you didn't do it proactively. So, it kind of breaches a little trust. Again, no one's perfect. We've all been in both situations. I have as well, obviously. But I agree with you. If you can be proactive about it and adjust the specific person to market, whatever market is for that, for the value they're providing, yeah, you're going to have a higher likelihood of retaining them for the long term. That's at least my opinion.
And anybody that I've ever known in the industry that's decided to leave a place that they've been loyal to for a long time, it's never just one thing. It's never just monetary compensation. It's usually maybe the culture in the shop's not what they want it to be or what they expected it to be. Maybe management's not meeting their expectations. There's always usually more than one thing. So as a manager that's maybe coming across something like that, try to get into the head of the individual that might be leaving, and it might if they're going somewhere else to get a couple of dollars, it might be some other things that might keep them there and not just matching the money. So.
Speaking of shop culture, you've been at several shops by this point. What do you think are the characteristics of the best run shops?
The shop that I gained the most experience in, I came into a very healthy and helpful culture there. The old days of technicians, kind of knowing how to fix a car and then not wanting to share it and not wanting to help each other, not allowing people to borrow tools. That's not really applicable in today's day and age, because those kind of guys and that kind of mentality is kind of getting phased out. So a healthy culture in the shop of where everyone's willing to help each other. And again, back to what I was saying earlier when I was in school, where, the guys that are really good at one thing are able to teach other guys that are good at other things, and everyone's kind of helping each other. Iron sharpens iron, and everyone's just willing to help each other. Even if I'm not getting paid on that car because it's not my car and I'm flat rate. So if I'm going to go help you, I'm not getting anything out of it. But that means when I need help, you're going to help me. I think that's the best culture. Just having the teamwork and having the camaraderie where everyone just wants to help each other. I mean, that's the most important.
This episode is brought to you by OpenLane, the leading online dealer marketplace for used cars. OpenLane is bringing Big Easy Wholesale to NADA 2025, January 23rd to the 26th in New Orleans. Big Easy Wholesale means the best inventory, the strongest protections, and the smartest technology, all within a single powerful platform that delivers simplicity and convenience. OpenLane is also bringing big prizes and big winners to the Big Easy. Set up a meeting with them at NADA to secure your spot in the OpenLane Big Easy Wholesale Sweepstakes. It's your chance to win some incredible prizes, from destination vacations to the latest tech to once-in-a-lifetime experiences like tickets to the Ryder Cup, the Eagles at the Sphere, and the Miami F1 Grand Prix. Terms and conditions apply. I'll also be joining OpenLane at booth 3713 on Friday, January 24th at 2:30 p.m. for a special live panel. So stop by and see how OpenLane is making wholesale easy. New to OpenLane? Sign up at NADA and receive a $2,500 sale fee credit. Learn more at openlane.com/NADA 2025 or click the link in the show notes below.
So speaking of this teamwork, like there's ways to incentivize that too. And I'm not saying it should be incentivized, like that should really just be a cultural thing. But have you worked anywhere where there were other bonuses consistently other than just like the hours you flag, right? Were there shops that maybe incentivized the shop, hey, if we pass this monthly goal, everyone gets a bonus, stuff like that?
I was in one of the places that I worked would do periodic like contests on a monthly basis, and they were usually structured differently, which kind of made it fun because the certain targets that you were trying to hit, say this month, it could be different next month. So then it kind of just, it changed it up. It was always nice having goals that were always kind of moving around, because it can get kind of monotonous on the day-to-day basis of kind of just coming in and working on cars. But it's also kind of, it makes it more fun when you're given like a different goal and different things to kind of shoot for and hit. So for instance, one might be, for this month we want to hit this many CP hours, or this month we want the shop to hit this many hours, or we want, the shop to have, so say last month, I don't remember the percentages. Say last month there was this percentage of upsells within the shop. We want to get to this percentage, and then everyone gets something. There's different ways of structuring it. I know I had came up with a contest idea that unfortunately didn't happen because of COVID, but I basically, with my management, we made a list of everybody based on their production, and we kind of did like a fantasy football or like an NFL draft, and tried to make two teams that were equal or relatively equal in production, and they would essentially go against each other in terms of who would make the most hours. So the guy next to me might be on the other team, but the guy to the left of me could be on my team. So it was scattered within the shop, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're saying keep it fun, keep it interesting, right? Like everyone's flagging hours every day, but you add a little spice, it gets you more excited to come to work.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good insight.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. That's definitely the basis of it.
Before we're gonna soon, I want to talk about today as a shop foreman and how you distribute work and stuff like that. But I am curious more about what you've seen in the most well-run shops. Is it the service director? What leads to, what else is unique about the most well-run operations in your opinion?
So there's a quote that my current service director says a lot, and it rings true, is the speed of the leader is the speed of the team.
100% agree with that.
From the top down, if everything is not perfect from the top down, then you can't expect, things to be perfect all the way at the bottom. So that person that's either the director or the service manager, however the organization structures it, whoever the head person running the department, every little thing needs to be like correct and right. Like even down to like the little things where, if they say, hey, employees have to park in this lot, and then say the director or the service manager parks on the service drive, it's like, hey man, we're all employees here. You should probably be parking over there too. But if you think that you're above that, to me, that shows that, maybe they're kind of doing as I say, not as I do. And I just I don't think that that's necessarily the right way of approaching it. So I feel like that the best leaders and the best directors and service managers are ones that practice what they preach, and just they're everything that they say, they execute, and they're very respected.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the service director. Do you think that the best service directors have to come up like the technician track, or do you think it's more important just to be a leader? Like you actually do not have to have been a tech. You have to have some technical understanding, but that's not as important to success in the role. Like what do you think makes a great service director in your opinion?
So in the future, I do aspire to get into service management and possibly being a director at some point. So on LinkedIn, I have actually kind of, at least in my region, in my market, I have kind of like poked around and looked at people's career journeys, because they do post kind of where they worked and how they've kind of got to where they were. And I have noticed that a pretty significant amount of service managers and directors came from being foremen, or not foremen, sorry, advisors. So they never really had the technical ability in the back, but they have a very good customer ability in the front. I'm assuming that dealers, dealership, fixed ops, and ownership probably view that the customer aspect probably a bit more than having the technical technical side of it. And that's kind of anecdotal. I mean, that might not necessarily be the case. It's just from kind of small sample size that I've looked up. I would say that as a technician, if you were to get into those positions, you kind of have to get used to dealing with the customers more frequently. In the past few years, as I was a team leader and currently as a shop foreman, I've definitely have improved and had to deal with customers a lot more frequent. I don't mind it. I mean, generally when I'm dealing with customers, it's either one of two things. I have to go up front and I have to help them or go with them to verify the concern that they're having that's maybe doesn't happen very frequent, or they are able to do essentially hit all the buttons and go over the bump the right way to get the noise to happen, just so that I know how it was done so I can try to show my technician.
Yeah.
Or if they're dissatisfied with the service or the repair that they had done, ultimately you just got to have empathy and you got to just try to get to the resolution of whatever's going to make them happy. Even if it gets to the point where the dealer has to break even or lose, if that's what it takes to retain the customer and keep them happy, then sometimes that's necessary at that point.
Speaking of customers, Bryan, how do you feel about this trend of mobile service and more dealers, looking into this, customers, interested in this? Do you think it's going to catch? Do you see the techs you work with? Do you see them having any interest in doing this? What's your take?
I don't, just on the product that I work on, I don't foresee that catching, at least in the near future. I mean, I guess it's possible, down the road. I mean, you could do basic stuff as mobile, but something as simple as even just like an update sometimes can cause modules to crash and whatnot. So I'd be, and if a car kind of doesn't start because it crashes on a programming, then you kind of have to have it in the shop to be able to rectify that problem. So if it's just basic stuff that they need done, then I could see that being done mobile. But none of the techs that I know, the previous dealer I was at, one of the technicians that was on my team was mobile, and he really didn't care to do it when he had to go out. It was kind of like, oh man, I gotta go on a call. He really wasn't looking forward to every time he had to go out.
But does that oh man change to a oh yes if the pay is higher?
The problem is you're always going to make more in your bay,
Because you don't have the travel time.
You're right. You're always going to be more efficient and be able to turn more hours working in your bay. So, I don't know how that would look. However, they would end up working that pay.
Yeah. It feels like the only way this pencils at scale with the best techs is if the consumer pays significantly more for the service to make it worth the tech's time. Alternatively, you can pay less, you'll get a, entry-level technician, and you might just do a very basic job, at the customer's home. So like it might just be that, jobs at home are reserved for the 20% of jobs or something like that, right? That are 80% easier than the rest or something along those lines.
I think that model could work. Another model that I would potentially look into exploring if that was the case is if you took seniored, well-rounded technicians that are just older. As you get in this field, as you age, you're not as limber, you can't move as fast, so it's harder to be as efficient as, as a tech. So, maybe if you got some technicians that are, in their 50s, maybe even 60s, the mobile service might actually be a better application for them because, the jobs generally while you're doing mobile are a bit more simpler, and they're not as efficient. If you get someone that's more efficient in that bay, you might get more money out of that bay while that guy's still also helping the organization or the company or the dealer on the mobile call.
Yeah. Quick shameless plug, but I just invested in a company called Master Tech. AI. Have you heard of this company?
No.
They basically do it's like a guide for techs, right? It helps you if you're diagnosing an issue. I guess it's like the modern all data or something like that. You could think about it. Pretty interesting. Check it out.
So is it like you just ask it like what AI thinks would be the resolution or repair for the issue?
Yeah, it's more than that, but that's pretty much the idea. It's supposed to be like your companion as a tech, but better than what's out there right now. So yeah, that's my shameless plug. I do want to ask you another question though. How do you distribute your work?
So as a team lead, I was a work dispatcher, and actually as a foreman, I'm a dispatcher as well. So I know that there's a lot of different.
Wait, Bryan, just real quick, can we just define for anyone here that is not familiar with the term, right? Shop foreman. How is that? What is your role? Can you just explain that?
All right. So in my current position, as where I'm at as foreman, I'm a non-working foreman. So my toolbox is there, but I don't turn hours. I manage a team of technicians and advisors, and I manage the workflow workflow and dispatching of the work. I deal with the OEM, reps as they come in, and we, talk about problematic cars and, say buyback situations or, repeat visits, things of that nature. Obviously mentor the technicians, try to help the advisors with sales as they need to be. Sometimes there's some things that are kind of complicated to explain to customers in terms of upsells or even just warranty repairs. So sometimes I have to help facilitate that.
Is it safe to say you're basically the liaison between the tech and the service department or any other department? You are the knowledge, you're solving the knowledge gap essentially.
Yeah, you kind of have to be malleable because you have to, sometimes you're the bridge between the technicians and the advisors, sometimes between the advisors and parts, sometimes the advisors to the customer, the technicians to the customer. It's kind of a always evolving role. But yeah.
So back to my question, like what is your method for distributing work, right? Like does the best tech truly, like does that tech get a lot more work than the lowest performing tech because they're performing the best? I mean, how do you go about this?
So one thing about being like say a master and highly qualified that a lot of technicians complain about is they're always getting like the bad work, the hard work, the complicated diag, So when I dispatch, I don't.
It's so funny because it's so true. I just have right now deja vu's of the guy that gets all the engines and stuff like that. It's just so true.
My philosophy. I don't like that because I've always tried to position myself or act in a manner that I would want to be treated if I was on the other end. So when I was a tech, I always hated when there was a time frame where I had all the water leaks, all the parasitic draws, all the convertible top leaks. It was like, man.
Oh my God.
So the way I dispatch is, again, I'm the liaison between individuals and the problems. So if I got a relatively new guy and the next ticket's a hard ticket, and we're about to find out what you're made of, boy, because you're gonna hop on it, and if you need help, I'm gonna help you because that's my role. And the reason I'm never gonna leave him out to dry. I was kind of just joking there, but that's the only way that you're gonna develop your team. If you always giving a guy that's good at one thing always the same thing, you're not helping them grow. And I know some dispatchers like to do it in that way, but the problem is down the road you're gonna have, it's always gonna be the same. But if you're always dispatching work, even if maybe they've never done it or they might not know how yet, that's what my role is. So in a couple of years, that team should be very self-sufficient. I mean, ultimately as a foreman or a manager for that matter, your job is kind of to coach your people to make you obsolete. If I'm able to develop my team to where they never have to come to me, that's kind of where it needs to be. That's kind of what my goal is,
So is it safe to say that your strategy is, for my experienced guys, of course they're going to get many of the big jobs, but I also want to give them some quick wins. Quick wins, keep the morale high, get them to, flag some more hours. And for my new guys, they're just, reality is they're going to get easier jobs or the more entry-level guys, but you're also going to give them some tougher jobs so, to help them grow and develop and challenge them. Is that roughly a fair assessment?
If anybody ever gets hung up, they always come to me and I help them get unstuck. So it's not a matter of, that they stay stuck. But yeah, there's always a mix of quick wins with complicated issues. And that goes for anybody that's on my team. And it's not like favorable to certification level or seniority.
Do techs have like a secret, what jobs have the arbitrage? Like what are the jobs that are the highest book hour and, you actually completed the quickest? Like
you want like the specific jobs or you just mean?
Yeah, I'm just curious to know, are there specific jobs that every tech wants no matter what level they're at, because the arbitrage there between what the book pays for it versus how long it actually takes you to complete is so great. Like the variance is so high that it's like, I want these jobs because the book pays 2 hours, but I get it done in 15 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to, I'm not going to get into specifics because if BMW sees this, they'll cut my time down. Yeah, but no, there's definitely jobs that are like that. The way I've always approached it is there's always jobs that people don't want to do, and those are the ones I got good at because I would always have a bunch of them. Then if somebody doesn't want to do, I don't want to do the evap in that car, it takes longer. All right, cool, I'll learn, and then I get all of them. You know what I mean? So then it's just repetition, and then every time you can chip away at the time it takes you until you have it where it's just clockwork. All the tools you got to grab, put your earbuds in, and then you have it apart in an hour, it's back together in an hour, and maybe it pays 10. Who knows?
This episode is brought to you by CDG Recruiting. The Car Dealership Guy platform has direct access to thousands of skilled professionals in the dealership and automotive industries. And so, building on top of our free industry job board, we've launched CDG Recruiting, a hands-on white glove glove automotive recruiting service. Whether you're looking to fill roles in dealership management, the C-suite, F&I, fixed ops, auto tech, or SaaS, we take the hassle out of hiring by doing the heavy lifting for you. It's easy. Start by submitting a confidential talent request on our website. Next, we connect you with a dedicated talent expert who will thoroughly understand your unique needs. And finally, we present you with top-notch candidates who are ready to drive your business forward. And here's the best part. We vet and screen every candidate for you so you don't have to. And with our placement guarantee, hiring through CDG Recruiting is 100% worry-free. Collectively, our team has decades of experience and has successfully placed over 1,000 roles in the automotive industry, so you know you're in good hands. If you're ready to find your next rockstar employee, try CDG Recruiting today by visiting cdgrecruiting.com or clicking the link in the show notes below. Again, that's cdgrecruiting.com.
I want to ask you this question. So there's a lot of big CEOs that listen to this podcast, in addition to, everyone else, of course. But the point is, if right now you knew that the CEOs of the top 10 largest dealer groups in the country who have an impact on, tons of dealerships across the nation, if you could tell them just like, what are the biggest challenges of your job, right? If they could forward this podcast to their teams or whatever and say, hey, like, listen to this, fix this. What are the biggest challenges of your job? And, if you can be as tactical as possible, like I'll give you an example, right? Our parts delay is really hurting performance in the shop. I don't know. Like I'm just throwing that out there, but that aside in general, what are the biggest challenges?
So those, the CEOs and, anyone higher up in the company, ultimately their goal is to have each bay produce as much as possible, obviously fixed correctly with the customer happy, proper CSI, or high CSI. So ultimately anything that prevents the tech from being efficient would be something that they would try to resolve or want to resolve. So that could be parts, that could be where the service cars are parked. They could be on the far end of the dealer, and then the tech has to walk across the lot every time to go get cars. That could be, maybe where the key box is located, where they have to go get the keys. One thing I know that can definitely be a hindrance is special tools that the manufacturer requires to do certain repairs, and tools that sometimes you need to do the repairs. Sometimes the tool room isn't organized and you don't know where that tool's at. So, maybe investing some money into organizing the tool rooms so that, the technician knows exactly where it's at and where to get it. I mean, off the top of my head, that's kind of what comes to my mind. But the one thing I will say that has actually been like very helpful, that is one thing I noticed that's been a big difference between when I first started and now, is video MPIs. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or come across that.
For anyone that doesn't know, so you're saying video multi-point inspection. Are you referring to showing the customer like a walk around of the car via video?
Right. So, just BMW kind of has been sponsored with the company MyKarma. I know there's a lot of others. I think AutoNation has their own platform. But in my opinion, that has been like a very good step in the right direction, because I used to have to do paper estimates. I used to have to write everything down, go find the parts prices, and that was very time consuming. And then you go and hand it to the advisor, and sometimes, there's some advisors that are a bit timid and kind of sometimes seem scared to try to do an upsell. You don't know if all that work kind of was even, all the work you just did, you don't even know if it was presented to the customer necessarily. But when I get to do my own estimates on the computer, I do my video, I do the whole walk around, and it's sent to the customer, I know they're at least seeing everything I said to them. So I know the attempt of the sale is at least there. And sometimes it's better for the customer to see exactly what I'm seeing. I could show them, as opposed to they just get a phone call and they're kind of having to take everyone's word for it. The video MPIs, I think, are a game changer. I know in the beginning, a lot of people were, at least on the technician side, were kind of hesitant towards it because it was more work. But I've noticed a significant, value to that from a technician's position.
So now the customer sees the valve cover gasket leaking, and they're more inclined to okay the job, which means the shop gets the job and you get the hours to work. So it's a win-win. So you're bullish on the video MPIs. You like that. Is there any other tech or anything like that that's intriguing to you?
I mean, there's tech on the cars that keeps coming out. That's like, it's like every model there's like some.
How do you feel about that? Yeah. How do you feel? How do you stay up to date on all that? Like, what's your take on just how technologically advanced these cars have become?
I mean, on like a monthly basis, there's I guess you could say technical training videos that we have to watch, and then obviously there's in-person training that I'd say maybe once a year or more, depending on the class and availability. So that's generally how you stay up to date. But man, to be honest with you, sometimes you get a brand new car that comes in and then it's got a problem. All right, gotta go start reading some manuals, looking at some stuff, and figure it out.
Can you tell BMW to relax with the $1,000 keys for programming and all that? I'm just kidding with you. I mean, I'm not kidding, but I am. Everyone hates that, dude. The freaking keys, man. Wow. All right, I want to transition to your outlook a little bit here. Do you believe there's really a technician shortage, or do you think that techs are just not being compensated enough? How do you feel about that? Because people say, oh, there's a technician tour today. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, no, pay more and there'll be more technicians. But is that really the case? What's your take?
Okay, I think there is a tech shortage, and I'm gonna go back to like say UTI or Automotive Training Center, or maybe your local community college where they have a technicians program. Just from my general understanding from some of the instructors that I know, the amount of people that are actually going into these programs is the numbers are down, say from like a decade ago. So less people are getting into it. I mean, just for example, like in my neighborhood, I live in a townhome community, right? I don't really see father sons tinkering on cars anymore. You can't really do that on newer cars, man. Like
So true.
how I got into working on cars, you open the hood of a newer car like a BMW or an Audi, or it's not the same.
Crazy how true that is.
So I think that younger kids aren't getting their hands on it, and they might not have ever known that they were into it. So I think less people are coming into the industry, and I think that's kind of where this is all kind of rooted at. Obviously,
Yeah, there's an exposure issue. Although I will tell you, like, the trades are like back in vogue, or at least really getting back in vogue. I mean, local guys owning, service business, making hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. Some of the bigger ones making, over $1 million a year, like service business guys, right? The trades have become a lot hotter as the college degree has become, I mean, I don't think it's fair to say worthless, but I mean, close to worthless for like a BBA or like a bachelor's. We're not even talking about masters. And again, I'm not talking about like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? If you want to be a doctor, you got to go to college. But like for other things, I mean, they're not very valuable. I mean, good luck, using your political science degree to make a real income. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be very tough.
That and sometimes people, they end up getting those degrees and they end up getting a job in a field that the degree isn't even applicable.
Yeah, it's irrelevant.
It's unfortunate.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't. At one point, I want to go back and get a degree because I think that might help me at some point get into management. I don't know how valuable it would be to hiring managers, but I think that stacked with maybe the experience I have would be pretty valuable. But just the degree alone is probably not as valuable as the technical and the hands-on.
So what's the solution for this tech shortage? Or by the way, or is the solution no solution, in the sense that the future may require fewer techs for cars that require less maintenance?
See, I guess that gets back to, I mean, if my bleak outlook is true, then maybe that would be the case. But truthfully, if I'm just being honest, a lot of techs kind of just want to get out of it. They just want to.
How do you deal with that? Yeah. How do you deal with, like, I think back to techs I worked with who, were techs for many years. It was tough because I would say many wanted to enter management or some form of, non-physical, opportunity. Not everyone had like a skill set that was very complementary of that. Doesn't mean you can train, but the reality is there's certain people that, are just friendlier and have more of a tolerance for working with customers and stuff like that. So how do you deal with, really aging techs? Not everyone can become a shop foreman.
No, that's true. Dude, it's ever evolving. I mean, there's a large dichotomy between, whether you got age gaps, you got personality gaps, you got generational gaps, just political. I mean, the technician staff that, that's out there, there's a lot of differences that you have, and trying to manage that and trying to keep everybody motivated is, it can be complicated, but, some people want to get out just because the amount of, there's a lot of pressure when how do I word that? Like, you say, like, I guess technicians always feel that they're the punching bag in the dealer because they send an estimate as an example, and the first thing when the advisor can't sell it is they want to cut the tech hours. They don't call parts to cut the parts. They don't call the manager to cut down the labor rate. They just want to cut the hours down. So that's just kind of just like a one example that I've been given, and they don't mind, say, taking a haircut, but they would kind of want it to be across the board as opposed to them just taking the hit.
100%. Well, look, we got to end on an optimistic note. What do you feel good about? What's keeping you excited about the industry and seeing how these cars are evolving?
Dude, every day there's always a new issue that I'm having to educate myself on how to repair it, or it's challenging me. And that to me is what I enjoy about this industry the most, is that maybe not every day for sure, but I mean, every week there is something new that happens that I have to try to resolve. And that pursuit of fixing it and the repair and the information to try to figure out how to resolve the issue is what's fun to me.
For any aspiring master techs, shop foremans listening to this, what's your advice?
I would say, so I actually wrote a few things down. So as a technician, I would say the three things that you have to be, the traits that you need in order to be successful. The technical ability is actually not the most important. I would say you need to have good time management. You need to have organization and critical thinking. Time management is important because when I was a technician, there wasn't a time that I was eating lunch that I was not having money be made. If I had to say, go use the restroom, I still wanted something to be happening so that I was making money. A car's programming, oil change is happening. Organization is important so that way you know where your tools are at, your paperwork is set up, everything is laid out so you can be efficient, and critical thinking so that way your next step in, say, a diagnostic process makes sense and you're not gonna, say, veer down the wrong path and waste time. So I would say that those 3 traits would be the most important. I mean, even for a shop foreman, that stuff is applicable too.
Wow, man, dude, this was fun, and I do have some other thoughts and ideas that we could talk about for hours more. So we might just have to do a part 2, man. I might just pull you in for a part 2.
Yeah, let me know, man.
Bryan Collins. Before we wrap up, any closing thoughts? Any questions for me?
Again, man, I just wanted to thank you for messaging me and giving me the opportunity to come on here. I know there's some very prominent and high intellectual individuals that watch this, so I'm grateful that you had me on here, and just thanks for the opportunity, man.
I appreciate you coming on. This was very insightful. I have to imagine it's going to make the rounds with many dealer groups, many dealers, many techs, just many auto industry people. And yeah, I'll say what we can do as well is, if you'd like, we can link your LinkedIn in the show notes below. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, ask any questions, so they can reach out. Maybe some people want to come work with you. So
hey, I'm not the hiring manager, but I know him very well, and if you're interested, yeah, certainly. But if anyone else, if you guys want to message me or have any questions for sure, just message me on LinkedIn, and we could chat.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.